Hello everyone and welcome to Life with Aprons. Today we are in the kitchen and I am canning lots and lots of bone broth. I've had a lot of bones in my freezer, and so today we're going to can the bone broth. I've got a huge canner. We're going to see how many jars we can fit in here. Join me. Today is all about canning lots and lots of bone broth. I've mentioned this in videos before, but my family usually buys a whole cow or a half a cow, and this year we had the opportunity to butcher one of our cows, so we had a whole cow in the freezer, which means lots and lots of beef bones. I've had those bones in the freezer, and it really is time for me to get them all out, make the bone broth, and begin to can it so that I can have that on my shelf. I really like to make sure I don't have as much in the freezer and that I have more on my canning shelf for a variety of reasons. One, if the power goes out, I'm not as concerned about the food that we might lose, or if we're gonna keep the freezers cold enough. If it's on my canning shelf, I really don't have to worry about that. Now, I don't can everything out of the freezer, but we have 4 freezers full of meat. And so I've been needing to work my way through those freezers so that we can at least condense it to maybe 1 freezer or 2 freezers. And that way, when the power does go out, the generator that we have can be used to make those cold and not 4. So we can cut our freezer amount in half. That has been my goal this week. And so in light of that, the bag of bones are about this big, and they can take up quite a bit of space in the freezer. And it really isn't that challenging to make beef bone broth. If you haven't seen my video on how to make bone broth, check that video out. It's really simple. I use my Instapot. That is my secret weapon because it literally takes no time to throw everything in the Instapot, turn it on, and walk away. And so yesterday and today, I have been keeping my Instapot going in overdrive, getting all of this bone broth ready. I put it in the refrigerator and then I skimmed a little bit of the fat off, not all of it, because I really want that fat to give it flavor. And now I am ready to put all the broth that I have made into jars and begin pressure canning. So let's get started. I want to show you what the beef bone broth looks like when I take it out of the refrigerator. I did this bone broth yesterday, and you can see that layer of tallow on the top, okay? Now this one's a really thin layer, so I'm actually gonna keep that one on there and can it that way, but I'm heating it up on the burner right now so that I can put it into my jars. This is one that I also did yesterday, and I had already taken off the fat, and you can see I left half the fat, and I'm also heating that one up so that I can put it in my jars. One of my pots of bone broth, the fat is all melted and it is ready to be spooned into jars, but I wanted to show you, this is all the fat that I skimmed off, and I left half the fat because, again, we want that flavor of the fat, and contrary to what culture will tell you, animal fats are so good for you. So we want to keep that in the bone broth, but I took some of it out. What I am going to do with this is I am going to purify it so that it no longer has that beefy smell, that beefy taste, and then I can use it for all sorts of things. I can make a tallow soap with it. I can make a night cream. I can make something for my lips, all kinds of ways that you can use this. It is amazing for your skin. The benefits are endless. So I'm gonna save that, and I may do a video later on this, but I'm going to purify that so that I can start using it in body products. I'm going to finish spooning this bone broth into jars, and then I'm gonna show you how we can this bone broth so it's safe to put on your shelf. All right, I have all the bone broth in my jars. I've got all the lids on the jars. This is how you do it for the weck jars. We've got clips here to keep down the rubber seal. And I am ready to can. Now, I just mentioned that for ball jars, this size canner will hold 19 quarts. I'm not so sure about the weck jars because, again, you can see the difference in the width here. So it's going to be slightly different, and I'll probably have to do 2 rounds. I have 2 kinds of bone broth here. I went ahead and put the beef bone broth in the straight containers, and then I have several jars of the curved containers with chicken broth in them. So we're going to can it all in one go. Now, I'm going to give you instructions for the All-American canner. You will need to look at your manual if you have a Presto canner because it's going to be slightly different. The only thing that will probably be similar is the processing times and the pounds of pressure. The first thing I did with my canner is I have 3 inches of water here in the bottom to start, and then I'm going to start loading my jars into the pot to see just how many we can fit in here. I remember when I first started pressure canning, it was very scary, and I was afraid that I was going to blow up the kitchen. But once you get over that first scare of the fact that it looks like there's some futuristic contraption in your kitchen that could possibly blow up your entire kitchen, once you get over that fear, pressure canning is an excellent way to preserve your food on the shelf for the long term. Now, if you're preserving acidic foods like tomatoes, jams, things like that, then all you need is a hot water bath. But if you are going to can less acidic things like bone broth and meats and things like that, then it is necessary that you pressurize your stuff. Okay, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I've got 7 weck jars on the bottom. The All-American canner comes with 2 of these grates. One is on the very bottom here. This second one I'm going to put on top of these jars, and then I'm going to pile my next set of jars on top of that. And that is how we are able to fit so many jars in here. So it looks like I'm going to be able to put 14 jars into the pressure canner. Here, be very careful. Okay, 2 more to go. All right, with the All-American canner, there is a, make sure that goes in there. There is a rim around here that you always need to make sure when you're canning that that has a little bit of oil around it. Now the oil can come off after you clean it, when you use it, and that sort of thing. So you always want to make sure that you reapply. And I'm feeling around and it's got a little bit of oil in places, but we need to go ahead and do a little oil. It doesn't matter what oil you use. I happen to have some olive oil on hand. And it's just really, I just rub it right around that edge because that is where the seal is for the lid. You want to check with your manual because it'll give you all the instructions. Okay. Now, I'll place my lid on top. On the canner, there is a notch on the bottom piece here, right about here on this side, and there's an arrow on the top of the lid. You want to line that notch up with the arrow. Okay, I've got my notches lined up right here. And the next thing I'm going to do is just make sure the lid is even. You can kind of get a feel with your fingers around it to make sure that the gap is the same all the way around. And then I'm going to start tightening my, what would you call these? I call them little screw things. But I'm sure there is a more professional name for these. You want to start with the opposite ends and begin to tighten all of these on this one, There is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's 8 of them. Okay. Let's get this one done. Okay. It is all set. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to light the burner. I'm going to put it on high and let it come up to pressure. When it is ready to put the weight on this right here, it will have steam coming out of the top consistently for about 5 to 10 minutes. Again, check your manual for this because it gives you all the instructions in the manual, but it will have the steam coming out for quite a bit. Then you take your weight right here, and this calls for 10 pounds of pressure. You want to check your area, depending on altitudes, could be different pressures, but this one is going to be 10 pounds of pressure. And once that air starts coming through, that steam, I'm going to carefully put this weight on the 10 pounds part, leave it on there, and then I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait until I hear it start to jiggle like this. It's going to start jiggling. That means it's come to full pressure, and then you can look at this gauge right here and it'll tell you it's close to 10 pounds of pressure. When that happens, I turn my stove down to a medium heat. This is the part where you will need to tailor it for your stove. I have pressure canned for so long on my stove that I know exactly where the sweet spot is. When I hit that sweet spot, this stops jiggling, and it'll jiggle every minute or every couple minutes. So you'll have some silence, and then you'll hear it, and then it'll stop again, and you know that is the sweet spot. You will need to find the sweet spot for your stove, but once you find that spot, you'll know it every single time. When it hits that spot and you hear it stopping and then jiggling a little bit, stopping for a minute or two, and then jiggling a little bit, you know to start your timer. For bone broth, we are going to process for 25 minutes for quart jars and 20 minutes for pint jars. So if you need more guidance on canning and recipes and what you can can and what are the times and how much pounds of pressure you use, it sounds like a lot, but there's a great book. It's called So Easy to Preserve. I've recommended this book for a while now. It has tons of recipes and it has tons of information about canning. It walks you step by step on how to do it, and it has all the times and everything that you need. I'll put a link in the description for that, and you can go check it out there. I'm sure there's other great books, but this one has been super helpful to me. As you can see, it's probably time for me to buy a new one because I have used it so much. I am finally finished canning my 50 jars of bone broth. I've got beef bone broth here, I've got chicken bone broth here, and I am gonna put these on the shelf, and I'm gonna be able to grab them all winter to put in soups and stews and all kinds of good things. I love being able to look at my canning shelf and see all kinds of things that I preserved throughout the summer and fall, and it's just a great feeling to know that I can just grab something on my shelf instead of having to go to the grocery store. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, put them in the comments below, and stay tuned for more great videos. Bye.